What's good, Milwaukee? This is your boy Track Lacer, quarterback of the mill, the Capitol Drive hero, and I'm here in front of a semi-live studio audience. I don't know what's going on down there, but I know that y'all are checking me out, and I'm about to give you a review. I had to, wear the Marvel T-shirt of X-Men: Days of Future Past. I guess technically this would be considered X-Men Part 5 because after X3 they did a movie called X-Men First Class, which was like a prequel where instead of showing Magneto and Wolverine and all them, as the old grizzly war-torn veterans, they showed them as like the young 19, 20-year-old X-Men. And that movie was well received. So this movie was real ambitious in the sense that it basically tried to combine both cast of characters. They combined the modern X-Men that we know that's been coming out ever since the year 2000. That's 14 years. That's a long time. And then they also combined the cast of these new X-Men, these younger X-Men from X-Men First Class. And not only did they combine both of the cast, but they also had a plot that dealt with time travel. And you saw the commercials. The one scene when the police upstrap on Magneto and they got him surrounded. He like please, and then they just go flying. Magneto still got his powers on deck. He's still super, impressive with what he can do. And it's a lot of dialogue between him and Professor X. And it was a real interesting choice that they made because the storyline basically said that in order to go back in time, we need somebody real strong because this process will literally tear your body apart if you're not pretty strong. So of course, they get your boy with the steel claws. They get Wolverine to do that. And y'all know Wolverine got a temper. So for him to go back in time and have to remain cool under the circumstances to make sure everything go right, um, is pretty good. So I guess the purpose, you probably wondering why did they need to go back in time in the first place? Well, they developed these robots similar to the Terminator from the Arnold Schwarzenegger days called the Sentinels. And the Sentinels were the only robots who had the power to defeat the mutants, which the X-Men are. So basically, you looking at a extermination, a genocide type of situation if these robots aren't stopped. And these robots have to be stopped by an event. And so I'm not gonna spoil the movie, you gotta go see it to see what the event is. So let me just break it down from the standpoint of is this movie worth you going to watch it? From a visual standpoint, you will be amazed because I think we're getting so used to the comic book movies by now that you're really starting to accept when they put Superman, Batman, whoever in New York City amongst regular people, it's starting to become more believable that we could actually see that. And then when you combine that with just the visual effects, especially of Mystique, you would think a blue chick with a nice body, nothing but body paint and little crazy blue skin and red hair and yellow eyes, you would think that that would freak you out after all this time, but it starts to become a little bit more normal in terms of seeing her, and she does some incredible things. Colossus isn't in the movie that long, but he looks cold. Iceman looks cold the way they did him. Um, the Cat Beast, he was all right. He wasn't that visually impressive, but it was a lot of visually impressive things. But I'm gonna just shut everything down right here. There's a character called Quicksilver, and Quicksilver, I like it in this movie. They never say his name. They never call him Quicksilver. and they joke around, they hint towards the fact that he might be Magneto's son, but they never say it outright. But by far, even with him just having a short amount of screen time, Quicksilver is the coldest part of this movie. And Quicksilver got a scene in this movie that's probably just as cold as anything that you will ever see in a superhero movie. And you just gotta go see it to know what I'm talking about. But it's almost worth the price of admission by itself. You just seeing that scene with him. Um, I thought the storyline was pretty complex and pretty ambitious, in terms of what they were trying to achieve. And that will probably lead to my only negative thing about this movie. If I was to grade it, I give it about an A minus. It was a little bit better than Captain America Part 2. But the reason that I give it an A minus is because superhero movies, at the heart of it, it all goes back to when we were little kids. I wasn't into uh, the comic books as much as I played with the toys, the action figures, whether it be G.I. Joe, Thundercats, He Man, played with all of that. So I think sometimes these movies, ever since The Dark Knight came out and ever since like the Avengers, the real goal that everybody's trying to do is make it so super realistic. And I think sometimes you forget, hey, we can get realistic on World Star Hip Hop, on CNN, or on our local news. We just want to be entertained. It's a comic book movie. Stop taking yourself so seriously. And I think that when the comic book movies try to take themselves too seriously, the action slows down and there's a lot of dialogue. And, we blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it's cool to have some dialogue because that's the way you have a story. But I think when that dialogue is going on, we missing out on action and we missing out on the cool special effects that these superheroes can do. Because that's basically why we came to see the movie. If we want to see a bunch of people talk, we could go down to the bus station or we could go to the food court at Mayfair Mall and listen to people talk. But I digress because that's a small part about it. I understand what they was trying to do, but that's the only thing that weighed it down a little bit. Is sometimes they were yapping too long. But in terms of action, in terms of special effects, and then there's one other thing that I thought was real tight about this movie. Um, I don't know his name. Uh, if you click the link, I'm gonna have my professional review on my website that you can read. I'll definitely have his name in there. But they have a dwarf. We used to say the word midget, but now we say dwarf. And you might remember him from the movie Death at a Funeral. Death at a Funeral with Martin Lawrence and Chris Rock. But dude can really act. And he was basically the man who designed and built these Sentinel robots that could kill the X-Men. And never once in the whole movie is it ever pointed out that he's a midget or that he's short or that he's a dwarf. It's like they just look at him as an intelligent scientist and they treat him like that. I mean, he has meetings with the president, and it's the first time in a long time that you see somebody that's different, that's not being ridiculed because he's different, or not even being looked at differently for being different. And I thought that was kind of tight. I'm looking forward to seeing him in some more stuff to kind of see what else they can put him in, and then maybe there'll be more, people from his background, that might get some roles too. So overall, I think, like I said, Quicksilver still stole the show. Magneto was on point. The other thing I like about Magneto is that even though that he's so-called a bad guy, in this movie, they are basically putting their differences aside. They're not really fighting against each other as much as they normally do in these movies. They kind of working together, and it's rare that you see a superhero movie where the bad guys and the good guys is kind of on the same page. But Magneto will really remind you once you forget how powerful he is as a potential villain. He does some stuff in this movie. He'll remind you that you don't want those problems. if he really coming for you. But Magneto, Quicksilver, and then Mystique, the blue chick, Hunger Games. Jennifer Lawrence, Hunger Games was getting it in on this movie, and she was not trying to hear it. She was not trying to. She wasn't going at all. And like I said, I'm not gonna spoil the movie to kind of clue you in on to why she was so angry, why she was so relentless. But yeah, she was not going, man. But you combine those three characters, uh, and let me say this too: when they do the time travel stuff, and you going back basically from the present day to the 1970s, the 1970s look cold. The 1970s, they got Richard Nixon on there. They got chicks with the afros. You know what I'm saying? They got the old 70s clothes, the houses, the cars. It really does look like the 70s. So that was another thing about it that I think that you would really enjoy in terms of them being faithful to the imagery that they're trying to project. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up by letting you know that there is a what do they call it? End credit scene. Marvel has become real famous for doing these because they always let you know what's about to take place in the next movie that they're coming out with. And the next movie on deck for the X-Men is called X-Men Apocalypse. And Apocalypse is supposed to be a villain. Like I said, I don't really read comics like that. I know a few of the key people because I used to play with the toys when I was a kid. But apparently, he is like one of the most difficult villains in all of the Marvel universe to fight against. And they kind of show a scene where he's kind of showing you how powerful he is. And yeah, that's also worth staying there for. But when you see it, you're not gonna really understand unless you do research on who Apocalypse is, but it will make sense because that's the next movie that they're going into. So I'm not gonna tell you what happened in the scene, but I will spoil that a little bit of that's who the scene is for those of y'all that when y'all see it, y'all trying to figure out like what was that about. That's basically what's going on. They just going for it, man, trying to get their money. But this is your boy Track Lacer. I enjoyed you. And I think I enjoyed my people out here in this studio audience. They real quiet. They not moving around. They didn't say much, but I appreciate your time. And this has been my opinion. Yeah.